actually called the Division of Privacy here and said, I'm giving you a free law clerk for the school year. So I'm currently working there 20 hours a week, and it's amazing. I have 2 huge cases and then maybe another 3 cases that I dabble in here and there that I'm not allowed to talk about the details because it's not public, but they're really sexy cases that will be headline news like a year from now.
If they move quick.
This one's moving pretty quickly.
So I'm Adley Bell. As they mentioned, I'm president of the Cyberlaw Students Association. I am the only lowly 2L on the panel, but I also did the Google Policy Fellowship. I did that this past summer, and I was at Public Knowledge, and that's a kind of advocacy policy organization. And then this semester, I interned in the Wireless Telecom Bureau at the FCC. So I guess for me, my background is already kind of in policy, so I think I like cyber/telecom law in terms of the fact that it allows me to kind of dabble in law and policy at the same time. This summer, I would say at Public Knowledge, I actually got to do a wide range of things, like from writing up a document against why the Protect IP Act. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but why that's such a bad thing, and kind of listing out some of the egregious stuff that people have done and kind of overreaching in intellectual property law in terms of copyright, the DMCA. So I got to draft a document for that. That actually got sent up to members of the Hill for them to look at. I also, what else did I work on? There was a lot of stuff going on with the AT&T T-Mobile merger. So a lot of coalition meetings, kind of trying to figure out how to stop that. I went to some FCC ex parte meetings on media, on like retransmission consent and like a lot of cable issues. I got to file some stuff with the DC Circuit Court for Verizon. Is filing a case trying to block the FCC. The FCC over the summer they issued a. Sorry, I'm trying to think. The FCC issued a document essentially trying to mandate data roaming for cell phone providers, and they're challenging that. Verizon is challenging that order. So we, Public Knowledge, wanted to kind of submit an amicus brief, but not on either party's side, but just saying, here's why we think this is an important issue. And if the court ultimately decides that they don't think that this is the right basis, they should remand rather than just striking it out. So I got to work on actually like doing the legal research on kind of what the standard is regarding, like I'm just taking admin law now, but I had to do research this summer on the Administrative Procedure Act and what the standards are regarding remand. So that was really, I did a lot of different stuff at Public Knowledge, which was really interesting. I actually worked with Joe Newman, who's sitting right there. We were both interns there this summer. So, and then this semester I was at the Wireless Telecom Bureau, and they've been largely focused on the merger again, but I actually didn't work on the merger until the very end. It was just a lot, most of the interns were doing a lot of document review, which is not exciting, but it's a good skill to have, because chances are at some point in your legal career, shortly after after law school, you'll probably end up having to do doc review. So it's a skill to learn how to use summation and how to go through and tag documents for what they contain and things like that. So I did that towards the end of my internship. But the first half, I was working on a notice of proposed rulemaking that I was with the Spectrum and Competition Policy Bureau, and they were responding to a petition that had been filed by some smaller carriers who were concerned that the bigger companies were essentially having agreements with the device manufacturers such that it was harder for them to get cell phones essentially that were operating in their portion of the spectrum. I won't go into all the nitty-gritty, but that was kind of the thing. They wanted the FCC to issue a notice of proposed rulemaking, or look into the issue of whether there really was some concern there, whether the action violated the Telecommunications Act, and whether they should try to mandate interoperability across the 700 megahertz spectrum between all the different blocks of any cell phones that operate on that can operate on all aspects of it. So I got to look into the commission's legal authority, if they wanted to do something like that, or what their legal authority would be, because they've had a lot of issues concerning their legal authority lately, particularly because of the Comcast decision that came down last year. So it's been pretty interesting. I've had, I think, some good internships. I'll shut up and let you guys ask another question.
Okay, well, you were all 1Ls either a year or two ago. So my next question is, how did you come across your very first job in the field as a 1L, presumably that 1L summer? Did you take specific steps during your 1L year to make yourself attractive to those sort of companies? And then how did you actually find the job that you ended up doing? We can start with anyone. We can start with.
So my 1L summer was spent with Sprint Nextel, and basically I applied to every job that had the word communications in it and sent my resume there and hoped for the best. I attended this exact panel as a 1L and received some very good advice, which I will share with you, which was that you have to develop like a niche, right? You have to explain, and this is not groundbreaking advice, but it's worth repeating. You have to sort of just figure out what really interests you. And when someone says, why are you interested in communications? The answer can't be, well, I don't know. Like, the answer has to be, you have to have figured it out why you're interested in communications or privacy or whatever it is. Or, well, what about communications interests you? You have to be able to say, oh, well, wireless interests me or cable interests me or privacy, whatever it is. You need to have like a specific answer. And so, when I got a call back from Sprint asking me to come in for an interview, and they brought me in, and they said, well, why Sprint? And I said, well, because wireless interests me, because spectrum policy is something that I'm really interested in, and it's something that I want to learn more about. So you just, there's a lot of talk about like, are lawyers more generalists or specialists right now? And I don't know if there's a general answer you can give to that question, but in terms of getting hired, in terms of getting a job, making yourself stand out as associated with a particular topic is really the key. I have found in my personal experience in all of my jobs, making yourself stand out so that when someone thinks, oh, we want someone who's really interested in wireless, oh, Josh, like, make yourself stand out like that. And that's really how I got the Sprint job in my first summer, and that's how I got the firm job too. So that's my answer to that.
In terms of actually getting the job, what I did and what I think works well for identifying an area or getting leads that you may not otherwise know is talk with the professors here at GW. I had Soloff as my crim law professor, and he would make passing comments about his work in privacy during class. And I actually went and talked with him after class one evening, and he gave me a slew of local nonprofit groups that I should apply to or at least look at. And so that's what led me into the CDT, was the recommendation of Cyberlaw. Other professors to just sit down and talk to, the ones that are going to know what the fellowships, what the positions are, who are going to be able to tell you who specifically to contact, whether or not the job is posted on Simplicity or not. You've got Binyami, you've got Soloff, you've got Rosen, you've got Nunziato. There's a whole slew of professors. GW has a very strong technology law program, and those professors are going to know who is interested in hiring somebody from GW. And if you can say Professor Soloff recommended I apply it as part of your cover letter, that's going to get you a second look right off the top. Okay. In terms of background and how to sell yourself, I'm somewhat different. I'm actually not a 3L and a 4LE. So I've been doing this a bit longer than most. But before starting law school, I spent 12 years in the computer industry in a variety of different roles. And at least for what got me past the